Lila Monroe was an ordinary young woman living in a small apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. At 25, she had already learned how to stretch every dollar and make sacrifices just to get by. Her days were filled with long shifts at a local diner where she served coffee and pancakes to tired commuters, and her nights were spent dreaming of something better, a life where she didn't have to count coins before paying rent or worry about whether her car would break down again. Aunt Rose was one of the few people Lila could rely on. Rose worked as a cleaner at the Fairmont Grand Hotel, a luxurious five-star building that stood tall against the city skyline. It was a place Lila had only ever seen from the outside, its sparkling windows reflecting sunlight during the day and glowing warmly at night. She often imagined what it might be like inside, the plush carpets, gleaming chandeliers, and guests dressed in expensive clothes. But those thoughts always felt distant, like scenes from a movie she'd never be part of. One evening, as Lila returned home after another exhausting shift at the diner, her phone buzzed with a text message from Rose. "Lila, I'm so sorry, but I've come down with a nasty cold," the message read. "The hotel is short-staffed tonight and they need someone to cover my shift. Could you please help me out? I'll pay you for your time." Lila sighed deeply, staring at the screen. She hadn't planned on doing anything more than collapsing onto her couch and binge-watching old sitcoms. But Rose had helped her countless times in the past, whether it was lending her money when she was short on rent or offering a shoulder to cry on during tough times. This was her chance to return the favor. Reluctantly, she replied, "Okay, I'll do it." An hour later, Lila found herself standing outside the grand entrance of the Fairmont Grand Hotel, clutching a duffel bag containing a borrowed uniform, cleaning supplies, and a pair of sneakers. She hesitated for a moment before stepping through the revolving doors. The lobby was even more breathtaking than she'd imagined. A massive crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting shimmering light across marble floors. Guests lounged on velvet sofas, sipping drinks, while soft piano music played in the background. For a brief second, Lila forgot why she was there, caught up in the beauty of it all. "Can I help you?" a voice asked, snapping her back to reality. A tall man in a sharp suit approached her, his expression polite but firm. He wore a name tag that read, Gregory, and carried himself with an air of authority. Lila quickly realized he must be the manager. "I'm here to cover for my aunt," she said, trying to sound confident despite feeling completely out of place. "She's sick and they told me to take over her shift." Gregory studied her for a moment before nodding. "You're Rose's niece, correct? Follow me. I'll show you where to go." He led her to a small staff room tucked away behind the main lobby. Inside, rows of lockers lined the walls, and a bulletin board displayed schedules and memos. Gregory handed her a clipboard with instructions and pointed toward a supply closet. "Your section is on the 15th floor. Make sure everything is spotless. We have high standards here." Lila nodded, pretending to understand exactly what high standards meant. Once Gregory left, she changed into the uniform, a plain, gray shirt and black pants, and stuffed her street clothes into a locker. Grabbing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies, she headed to the elevator, her heart pounding with nerves. The ride up to the 15th floor felt endless. As the numbers ticked higher, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. What if someone figured out she wasn't really a professional cleaner? What if she messed something up and got fired, or worse, banned from the hotel forever? When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a hallway lined with richly decorated doors. Each suite looked like it belonged in a palace rather than a hotel. Lila glanced at her clipboard, double-checking which room she was assigned to clean. One of them was Suite 1507, listed as vacant for the night. Taking a deep breath, she pushed her cart down the hall and unlocked the door. Inside, the suite was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights, and the furniture looked like it cost more than Lila made in a year. There was a king-sized bed with pristine white sheets, a sitting area with leather armchairs, and a bathroom bigger than her entire apartment. Despite its elegance, the room still needed attention. Empty glasses sat on the coffee table. Towels were scattered on the floor, and faint traces of perfume lingered in the air. Lila rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She dusted surfaces, vacuumed carpets, wiped down mirrors, and scrubbed the bathroom until it sparkled. Though she wasn't used to this kind of work, she threw herself into it, determined to prove she could handle the job. By the time she finished, sweat dripped down her forehead and her arms ached from carrying heavy supplies. As she packed up her cart, she noticed something strange, a sleek smartphone lying on the bedside table. It wasn't hers, and it definitely didn't belong to the hotel. Curious, she picked it up and turned it over in her hands. The screen lit up, displaying notifications and messages. Before she could investigate further, a knock sounded at the door. Startled, Lila shoved the phone into her pocket and opened the door slightly. Standing there was a man unlike anyone she'd ever seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, he exuded confidence and charm. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through her. "Hello?" he said smoothly, flashing a smile that could melt ice. "I'm Ethan Brooks. I believe we're sharing this suite?" Lila froze, unsure how to respond. Sharing? That couldn't be right. Suite 1507 was supposed to be empty. And who was this man? Before she could explain herself, Ethan stepped forward, extending a hand. "You must be staying here too. I apologize if I startled you. I thought I was the only guest." For a split second, Lila considered telling him the truth, that she was just a substitute cleaner covering her aunt's shift. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not with suspicion but with genuine curiosity. Or maybe it was the fact that no one had ever mistaken her for a guest at a place like this before. Whatever the reason, she found herself nodding instead of speaking. "Yes," she said softly, forcing a smile. I'm staying here too." Ethan's grin widened. "Wonderful. I hope you don't mind me barging in unannounced. I wanted to check on the room before settling in. Do you mind if I join you for a moment?" Before Lila could protest, he walked past her and entered the suite. She closed the door behind him, her mind racing. How had this happened? Why hadn't she corrected him? And what was she going to do now? Ethan Brooks moved around the suite with an easy confidence, glancing at the freshly cleaned surfaces and neatly arranged furniture. He seemed pleased with what he saw, though Lila couldn't help but feel a knot tightening in her stomach. She stood near the door, clutching the handle of her cleaning cart like it was a lifeline. Her heart raced as she tried to figure out how to fix this mess, or whether she even wanted to. "This is quite impressive," Ethan said, turning back to face her. "I assume you had something to do with how spotless everything looks?" Lila blinked, caught off guard by his compliment. "Oh, yeah, I helped clean up a bit." "Well, you've done an excellent job." His tone was warm, almost playful, and his smile made her cheeks flush. "You must be used to staying in places like this. Are you from Chicago?" The question threw her off balance. Did rich people really talk like this? So casually, so effortlessly charming? She hesitated, unsure how to respond without giving herself away. Finally, she settled on a vague answer. "Not originally, but I've been here for a while." "Interesting," Ethan said, nodding thoughtfully. "What brings you to the city?" Lila's mind scrambled for a plausible story. "Work, mostly. Just trying to make ends meet, you know?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Believe me, I understand more than you might think. Everyone's just trying to survive in their own way." His words surprised her. Despite his polished appearance and obvious wealth, there was something genuine about him, a hint of humility that didn't match the image of a millionaire. It made her wonder if maybe he wasn't as different from her as he seemed. They fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside the window. Lila shifted uncomfortably, aware that she should probably leave before things got any weirder. But before she could say anything, Ethan spoke again. "I don't think we've properly introduced ourselves," he said, stepping closer. "I'm Ethan Brooks." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Lila shook it. "I'm Lila Monroe." "Nice to meet you, Lila." His handshake was firm but not overpowering, and his gaze lingered on her for a second longer than necessary. Since fate has brought us together in this suite, perhaps we could continue our conversation over dinner. There's a fantastic restaurant on the rooftop. I'd love to hear more about your work. Lila's eyes widened in disbelief. Was he serious? Dinner? With her? She opened her mouth to decline, but no words came out. Instead, she found herself nodding slowly, as if her body had decided for her. Sure, that sounds nice. Great. Ethan's grin returned, brighter than ever. Let me freshen up and then we'll head upstairs, shall we say 30 minutes? Before she could protest, or even fully process what had just happened, he disappeared into the bathroom, leaving her alone in the suite. Lila stared at the closed door, her thoughts spinning wildly. What had she gotten herself into? This was insane. Completely and utterly insane. She glanced down at her uniform, suddenly feeling self-conscious. There was no way she could go to a fancy rooftop restaurant dressed like this. But then she remembered the duffel bag she'd brought with her earlier. Inside was the dress she'd planned to change into after her shift, a simple black number she'd bought months ago for a friend's wedding. It wasn't glamorous, but it would have to do. Quickly, she pulled the dress out of her bag and slipped into the bedroom to change. As she zipped it up and smoothed out the fabric, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. For once, she didn't look completely out of place. Maybe, just maybe, she could pull this off. When Ethan emerged from the bathroom, he looked even more polished than before. His suit was immaculate, and his hair was styled to perfection. Yet there was still something approachable about him, something that put her slightly at ease. He offered her his arm as they left the suite, and though it felt strange to link hers with his, she did it anyway. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt like an eternity. Lila kept her eyes glued to the floor, avoiding the curious stares of other guests who entered and exited along the way. When they finally arrived at the restaurant, Ethan guided her to a secluded table overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, with twinkling lights stretching as far as the eye could see. A waiter appeared almost instantly, presenting them with menus bound in leather. Lila skimmed the options, her eyes widening at the prices listed beside each dish. These were numbers she usually associated with rent payments, not meals. Ethan noticed her discomfort and leaned in slightly. "Don't worry about the cost," he said quietly. "Order whatever you like." "But," she started, then stopped herself. Arguing would only draw attention to her situation, and she didn't want to ruin the fragile illusion she'd created. Reluctantly, she chose a pasta dish, hoping it wouldn't bankrupt him, or worse, reveal her lack of sophistication. As they waited for their food, Ethan launched into a series of questions about her life. Where had she grown up? What kind of work did she do? Did she enjoy traveling? Lila answered cautiously, weaving half-truths into her responses. She told him she worked in customer service, close enough to waiting tables, and that she loved exploring new places, even though she'd barely left Illinois. To her relief, he didn't press for details, seeming content to let the conversation flow naturally. In turn, Ethan shared bits and pieces of his own story. He explained how he'd built his fortune through tech startups, starting with nothing and working tirelessly to achieve success. But he also talked about the challenges he faced, the loneliness, the pressure, the constant scrutiny from others. Listening to him, Lila began to see glimpses of the person behind the polished exterior. He wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was someone who understood struggle, even if his struggles looked very different from hers. By the time dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate cake topped with gold leaf, Lila had almost forgotten why she was nervous in the first place. Ethan's charm was disarming, and his interest in her felt sincere. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to live in a world where opportunities weren't limited by money or circumstances. But as the evening wore on, guilt began creeping back in. Every laugh, every shared glance reminded her of the lie she was living. She wasn't a guest at the Fairmont Grand Hotel. She wasn't some sophisticated woman dining with a millionaire. She was just Lila Monroe, a struggling waitress pretending to be someone she wasn't. And sooner or later, the truth would come out. The next morning, Lila woke up feeling like she'd stepped into a dream, or maybe a nightmare. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind over and over again. The rooftop dinner, Ethan's easy charm, the luxurious surroundings. It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie she wasn't supposed to be part of. But as the sunlight streamed through her apartment window, reality came crashing back. She was still just Lila Monroe, a diner waitress who had lied to a millionaire. She buried her face in her pillow, groaning softly. What had she been thinking? Pretending to be someone else wasn't her style. Sure, it had started as an innocent mistake, Ethan assuming she was a guest, but she'd let it continue, even encouraged it by agreeing to dinner. Now she was stuck in a web of lies, and untangling herself seemed impossible. Her phone buzzed, on the bedside table, startling her. When she picked it up, she saw a text message from an unknown number. Her stomach dropped as she opened it. "Good morning, Lila. I hope you slept well. Let me know if you're free for lunch today. I'd love to see you again." It was Ethan. Of course it was Ethan. Who else would be texting her at this hour with such confidence? Lila stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. How could she respond? Saying yes meant continuing the charade, while saying no might raise suspicions. Either way, she was trapped. After several minutes of deliberation, she typed a hesitant reply. "Hi, Ethan, thanks for last night. It was really nice. Lunch sounds good, but I'm not sure yet. I'll let you know." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. She needed time to think, to figure out how to handle this situation without making things worse. For now, keeping him at arm's length seemed like the safest option. Later that day, Lila returned to the Fairmont Grand Hotel to finish her aunt's shift. This time, she wore her uniform without hesitation, determined to focus solely on her work. Cleaning supplies in hand, she avoided the 15th floor altogether, sticking to the lower levels where the chances of running into Ethan were slim. Still, every time she heard footsteps or voices in the hallway, her heart skipped a beat. By mid-afternoon, fatigue began to set in. Pushing her cart down another corridor, she paused to catch her breath and nearly collided with Mia Roberts, one of the hotel's full-time cleaners. Mia was older than Lila, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She frowned when she saw Lila's flushed face and disheveled appearance. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Mia said bluntly. "What's going on with you?" "Nothing," Lila replied quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired, that's all." Mia didn't look convinced. "You've been acting weird ever since yesterday. Did something happen while you were covering your aunt's shift?" Lila hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. She considered brushing off the question, but something about Mia's knowing gaze made her falter. "I kind of got mistaken for a guest," she admitted quietly. "One of the penthouse guests thought I belonged there, and I didn't correct him right away." Mia raised an eyebrow. And, Lila sighed, lowering her voice. "He asked me to dinner. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just sort of spiraled out of control." To her surprise, Mia didn't laugh or scold her. Instead, she crossed her arms and studied Lila carefully. "This guy, he's rich, isn't he?" "Yes," Lila admitted. "He's a millionaire. His name is Ethan Brooks." Mia whistled under her breath. "Wow, you really stepped into the deep end, didn't you? Look, I don't know what you're planning to do, but you can't keep lying to him. Sooner or later, the truth will come out and it'll hurt both of you." "I know," Lila said miserably, "but I don't know how to fix it. Every time I try to tell him, something stops me. He's so nice, Mia. He doesn't deserve to be tricked like this." Mia nodded sympathetically. "That's true, but honesty is always better in the long run. Just be careful, okay? People like him live in a different world. They don't take betrayal lightly." The warning lingered in Lila's mind as she finished her shift. By the time she left the hotel, she felt more conflicted than ever. Mia was right. She couldn't keep pretending to be someone she wasn't. But the thought of confessing everything to Ethan filled her with dread. What if he hated her? What if he never wanted to see her again? Over the next few days, Ethan continued, reaching out to her, sending texts and leaving voicemails. Each message was friendly and casual, as if he hadn't noticed anything unusual about their interactions. Lila responded sparingly, using vague excuses to avoid meeting him in person. But avoiding him only made her guilt grow stronger. She couldn't keep living like this, torn between two versions of herself, the real Lila and the fake one she'd created. Finally, unable to bear the weight of her secret any longer, she decided to meet him one last time. If she was going to confess, she wanted to do it face to face. She chose a quiet cafe downtown, far enough from the hotel that they wouldn't run into anyone they knew. When she arrived, Ethan was already seated at a corner table, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as she approached, his face lighting up with a smile. "Lila," he said, standing to greet her. "I'm glad you made it." "Hi, Ethan," she replied, sliding into the chair across from him. Up close, he seemed even more handsome than she remembered, but also more intimidating. The weight of her deception pressed heavily on her chest. They ordered coffee and small talk filled the silence at first. Ethan asked about her week and she gave vague answers, her mind racing as she tried to find the right moment to speak. Finally, when the conversation lulled, she took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Something important?" Ethan tilted his head, his expression curious. "Okay, what is it?" Lila hesitated, searching for the right words. "Remember when we met at the hotel? You thought I was a guest, but I'm not. I was working there. I'm a substitute cleaner. I covered my aunt's shift that night." For a moment, Ethan just stared at her, his brow furrowed in confusion. Then, slowly, understanding dawned on his face. "Wait. You're telling me you're not actually a guest? You work at the hotel?" "Yes," Lila whispered, tears pricking the corners of her eyes. "I should have told you sooner, but I panicked. I didn't mean to deceive you. It just happened. And then it got out of control." Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. Lila braced herself for anger or disappointment, but instead Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm but serious. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" he asked. "I wouldn't have judged you for being honest." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I was scared. Scared you'd think less of me. Scared you'd walk away." Ethan sighed, shaking his head. "Lila, you don't owe me anything, but trust has to go both ways. If we're going to move forward, if you want us to move forward, you need to be upfront with me. No more secrets." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. She nodded, blinking back tears. "I understand, and I'm sorry for everything." Ethan studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Okay. Apology accepted. But let's take things slow from here, all right? I like you, Lila. I really do. But I need to know I can trust you." Relief washed over her, followed by a wave of gratitude. Despite everything, he was giving her a second chance, a chance to prove she was worth it. As they left the cafe together, Lila felt a glimmer of hope. Confessing the truth hadn't been easy, but it had cleared the air between them. Maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild what she'd almost destroyed, one step at a time. In the days following their conversation at the cafe, Lila felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, she was relieved that Ethan had accepted her apology and given her a chance to start fresh. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were still fragile between them. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, especially when it involved someone like Ethan, a man who lived in a world so different from hers. Lila threw herself into her daily routine, trying to focus on work and keep her mind off the uncertainty of her relationship with Ethan. She returned to her shifts at the diner, serving coffee and taking orders with a forced smile. Her co-workers noticed her quiet demeanor but didn't press her for details. To everyone else, she seemed fine. Just another ordinary day in the life of Lila Monroe. But inside, she was anything but okay. Meanwhile, Ethan kept his promise to take things slow. He sent occasional texts checking in on her, asking how her day was going or if she needed anything. His messages were kind and thoughtful, but there was a noticeable distance in his tone, a carefulness that hadn't been there before. It made Lila ache with guilt all over again. She wanted to prove to him that she was trustworthy, that she wasn't the person who had lied to him. But she didn't know where to begin. One evening, after finishing her shift at the diner, Lila decided to visit the library. She'd always found comfort in books, losing herself in stories about people overcoming challenges or finding redemption. As she wandered through the aisles, she spotted a section dedicated to self-improvement and personal growth. An idea sparked in her mind. Maybe reading about honesty, communication, and building trust could help her navigate this complicated situation. She picked out a few books and settled into a corner table, flipping through the pages with determination. Some of the advice seemed simple enough. Be open, listen actively, admit mistakes. But putting those principles into practice felt daunting. How could she show Ethan that she was truly sorry and committed to being better? The next morning, Lila woke up with a plan. Instead of waiting for Ethan to reach out, she decided to take the initiative. She sent him a text message inviting him to meet her at the park later that afternoon. She chose a quiet spot near a small pond, hoping the peaceful setting would make it easier to talk. Ethan agreed to meet her, though his response was brief. When they arrived at the park, he greeted her warmly, but kept his hands tucked into his pockets, as if unsure what to do with them. They walked along the path together, the sound of birds chirping filling the silence between them. "I wanted to thank you," Lila said, finally breaking the quiet, "for giving me another chance. I know I messed up and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I want you to know I'm serious about making things right." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I appreciate that, Lila. And I meant what I said. I like you. But rebuilding trust takes time. We both need to be patient." "I understand," she replied softly, "and I'm willing to wait. But I also want to show you that I'm not the same person who lied to you. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realized I owe it to myself and to you to be honest about who I am." Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her. "That's a good start. Who are you, Lila?" Really, it was a simple question, but it carried so much weight. Lila took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I'm just me, a regular person trying to get by. I work 2 jobs because I have to, not because I love it. I grew up in a small town, and moving to Chicago was supposed to be my big opportunity. But life here hasn't been easy. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere, like I'm constantly pretending to be someone I'm not. That night at the hotel, it wasn't just about you mistaking me for a guest. It was about me wanting to escape my own reality, even for a little while." Her words hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. For a moment, Ethan didn't say anything. Then, slowly, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you for sharing that with me. It takes courage to be honest, especially when it's hard. I can't promise everything will be perfect from now on, but I'm willing to try if you are." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes, but she blinked them away, nodding fiercely. "I am. I really am." Over the next few weeks, their relationship began to heal. Ethan continued reaching out to her, and this time, Lila responded openly and honestly. She told him about her struggles at work, her dreams of becoming a graphic designer, and the sacrifices she'd made to survive in the city. In return, Ethan shared more about his own journey, the challenges of building a business from scratch, the loneliness that came with success, and the pressure to always appear perfect. Their conversations became deeper and more meaningful, helping them connect on a level they hadn't before. Slowly but surely, the awkwardness between them faded, replaced by a sense of mutual respect and understanding. Lila started to see Ethan not just as a millionaire, but as a person with flaws and fears, just like her. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan invited her to join him at an art gallery opening downtown. At first, Lila hesitated, worried about fitting in among the wealthy crowd. But Ethan reassured her, promising to stay by her side the entire time. When they arrived, she clung to his arm nervously, scanning the room filled with elegantly dressed guests sipping champagne and discussing abstract paintings. To her surprise, Ethan introduced her as a friend, rather than glossing over their connection. He guided her through the exhibit, explaining the significance of each piece and encouraging her to share her thoughts. By the end of the evening, Lila found herself relaxing, enjoying the experience in a way she hadn't expected. As they left the gallery, Ethan glanced at her with a small smile. "You looked like you were having fun tonight. Did you enjoy it?" "Yes," she admitted, smiling back. "More than I thought I would. Thank you for bringing me." "Anytime," he said, simply. "You deserve to experience things outside your comfort zone. Who knows? Maybe someday you'll design something that ends up in a gallery like this." His words stayed with her long after they parted ways that night. For the first time in years, Lila allowed herself to dream, not just about surviving, but about thriving. Maybe she couldn't change her past, but she could shape her future, and maybe, just maybe, Ethan could be part of that future too. Despite the progress they'd made, Lila knew their relationship still had its challenges. There were moments when old insecurities crept back in, reminding her of the gap between their worlds. But every time doubt surfaced, she reminded herself of the promise she'd made, to be honest, to communicate, and to never stop trying, because sometimes second chances were worth fighting for. As weeks turned into months, Lila and Ethan's relationship continued to grow stronger. They spent more time together, exploring the city and sharing pieces of their lives that neither had revealed to anyone else before. For Lila, it was a chance to step outside her comfort zone and experience things she'd only dreamed of: art galleries, concerts, and rooftop dinners under the stars. For Ethan, it was an opportunity to let his guard down and be himself around someone who didn't care about his wealth or status. But despite the joy these moments brought, Lila couldn't ignore the lingering doubts in the back of her mind. She often wondered if their connection was real or just a fleeting escape from their respective worlds. Could someone like Ethan truly understand what it meant to struggle? And could she ever fully belong in his world without feeling like an outsider? These questions weighed heavily on her as she went about her daily life. At the diner, she served customers with a smile, but her thoughts were elsewhere. At night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations with Ethan in her head. Was she holding on to something that wasn't meant to last? Or was she simply afraid of losing what they had built together? One afternoon, while cleaning a conference room at the hotel during another shift covering for her aunt, Lila overheard two executives discussing Ethan's latest project. Curious, she paused near the door, pretending to rearrange supplies on her cart. "He's really poured his heart into this foundation," one executive said. "It's all about helping kids from low-income families get access to education and career opportunities." The other nodded. "Yeah, I heard he named it after someone who inspired him. Can't remember the name, though." Lila's heart skipped a beat. A foundation? Inspired by someone? Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what they were talking about. Had Ethan created this initiative because of her? The thought seemed impossible, yet it wouldn't leave her mind. Later that evening, unable to resist her curiosity, Lila did some research online. It didn't take long to find information about the Brooks Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources for underprivileged youth. What caught her attention most was the mission statement: to empower individuals to rise above their circumstances and create a brighter future. Scrolling further, she discovered an interview Ethan had given during the foundation's launch event. In the article, he spoke passionately about how meeting someone had changed his perspective on privilege and responsibility. Though he never mentioned her name, his words resonated deeply with Lila. "I used to think success was measured solely by achievements and accolades," Ethan was quoted as saying. But then I met someone who reminded me of the importance of humility, hard work, and resilience. This foundation is my way of giving back, to honor the lessons I've learned and help others reach their full potential. Reading those words left Lila speechless. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the impact she'd unknowingly had on Ethan's life. Despite everything, the lies, the misunderstandings, the insecurities, he had taken something positive from their journey together. He hadn't judged her for her mistakes. Instead, he had used them as motivation to make a difference. For the first time in a long time, Lila felt proud of herself, not because of what she had done, but because of how she had inspired someone else. It was a reminder that even in her darkest moments, she had value. That realization gave her the courage to confront her fears about their relationship once and for all. The next day, Lila reached out to Ethan, asking if they could meet for coffee. When they sat down across from each other at a cozy cafe, she took a deep breath and began speaking. "Ethan, I need to say something," she started, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. "I read about your foundation yesterday, and I don't know how to put this into words, but hearing you talk about wanting to give back, it made me realize how much you've already given me." Ethan tilted his head, his expression curious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've taught me that it's okay to dream bigger than I ever thought possible. You've shown me kindness when I didn't deserve it, and patience when I needed it most. And now, seeing the work you're doing through the foundation, it makes me believe in myself again. Like maybe I can do more than just survive. Maybe I can thrive." Her confession hung in the air, raw and heartfelt. Ethan stared at her for a moment, his blue eyes softening. Then, slowly, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Lila, you've always been capable of great things," he said gently. "You just needed someone to remind you of that. And honestly, you've done the same for me. Meeting you changed the way I see the world, and myself. I'll always be grateful for that." Tears pricked the corners of Lila's eyes, but she blinked them away, smiling faintly. "Thank you, that means more to me than you'll ever know." They sat there for a while longer, talking about their hopes and dreams for the future. Lila admitted that she wanted to pursue graphic design seriously, even if it meant taking risks and making sacrifices. Ethan encouraged her, offering to connect her with contacts in the industry and support her however he could. By the time they left the cafe, Lila felt lighter than she had in months. For so long, she had carried the weight of her insecurities and doubts, afraid that she wasn't good enough for someone like Ethan. But now, she understood that their differences didn't define them. It was their shared humanity that mattered most. Over the following weeks, Lila threw herself into pursuing her passion for design. With Ethan's encouragement, she enrolled in online courses and started building a portfolio. It wasn't easy juggling work and studies, but every small victory fueled her determination to keep going. For the first time in years, she felt like she was moving forward rather than standing still. Meanwhile, Ethan remained a constant presence in her life, cheering her on and celebrating her progress. Their bond deepened as they navigated challenges together, proving that their connection was built on more than just surface-level attractions. They weren't perfect, and they still had moments of doubt and uncertainty, but they faced them head-on, committed to growing alongside each other. One evening, as they walked along the lakefront, Ethan stopped suddenly and turned to face her. "Lila, I want you to know something," he said, his tone serious but warm. "No matter where life takes us, I'll always be here for you. Not because of who you are or what you've done, but because of who we are together." Lila looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. "And I'll always be here for you too," she replied softly. "Because you've shown me that second chances aren't just about fixing mistakes. They're about becoming better versions of ourselves." In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the city skyline and the gentle lapping of the water, Lila knew she had found something rare and precious. Love wasn't about perfection or fitting into someone else's world. It was about embracing imperfections, supporting each other's growth, and believing in the possibility of a brighter future. And for Lila Monroe, that was enough. Months passed and Lila's life began to transform in ways she had never imagined. Her graphic design skills improved rapidly as she dedicated herself to her online courses, pouring hours into learning new techniques and experimenting with creative ideas. What started as a hobby soon became a passion, and eventually a dream within reach. With Ethan's support and connections, she landed her first freelance project designing promotional materials for a local business. Though it was small, the accomplishment filled her with pride. Ethan continued to play a role in her journey, offering advice when she needed it and cheering her on during tough times. But their relationship evolved too. They weren't just two people navigating their differences. They were partners who trusted and respected each other. Even though their worlds remained vastly different, they found common ground in their shared values: hard work, honesty, and a desire to make a positive impact. One evening, as they sat on Lila's tiny apartment balcony eating takeout pizza, Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. "You know," he said, wiping his hands on a napkin, "you don't have to stay here forever. You've outgrown this place." Lila raised an eyebrow, amused. "What are you suggesting? That I move into a penthouse suite?" He chuckled but didn't dismiss the idea entirely. "Maybe not tomorrow, but someday. You deserve better than this, Lila, and I want to help you get there." She smiled softly, touched by his words but unwilling to rely on him completely. "I appreciate that, Ethan. Really, I do. But I need to prove to myself that I can build my own path. This apartment might be small and cramped, but it reminds me of how far I've come. One day I'll upgrade, not because someone else tells me to, but because I earned it." Ethan nodded, understanding her perspective. "Fair enough. Just know that I'll always be here to support you no matter what." As spring turned to summer, Lila received an invitation to attend the grand opening gala for the Brooks Foundation. The event would be held at one of Chicago's most prestigious venues, attracting influential figures from all walks of life. Lila hesitated when she saw the glossy envelope in her mailbox. She hadn't seen Ethan in person since their last conversation about her ambitions, and attending such a high-profile event felt intimidating. Still, something inside her urged her to go, not for Ethan but for herself. If she truly wanted to step outside her comfort zone and embrace the future she was working toward, this was her chance. After some deliberation, she accepted the invitation, choosing a simple yet elegant dress from a thrift store. It wasn't designer or expensive, but it made her feel confident, a reflection of who she was rather than who others expected her to be. On the night of the gala, Lila arrived at the venue feeling nervous but determined. Guests mingled in the grand ballroom dressed in suits and gowns while sipping champagne and discussing the foundation's mission. Lila stayed near the edges of the crowd, observing quietly. Despite her initial discomfort, she couldn't deny the sense of pride swelling within her. The foundation represented everything Ethan believed in, and indirectly, everything she had inspired him to become. Just as she was contemplating slipping away unnoticed, Ethan spotted her across the room. His face lit up with a smile as he excused himself from a group of executives and walked over to greet her. "You came," he said warmly, taking her hand in his. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I almost didn't," Lila admitted, returning his smile. "But I realized I needed to see this for myself. Your foundation, it's amazing, Ethan. Truly inspiring." "Thank you," he replied sincerely. "But none of this would have happened without you. You reminded me of what really matters." Before she could respond, the MC called everyone's attention to the stage. Ethan stepped forward to deliver a speech, leaving Lila standing near the back of the room. As he spoke, his voice carried through the microphone, echoing off the walls. "This foundation is dedicated to empowering individuals to rise above their circumstances and create a brighter future," he began. "It's named after someone who taught me the true meaning of resilience and humility. Someone who showed me that success isn't measured by wealth or status, but by the lives we touch and the legacies we leave behind." Lila froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Was he talking about her? She glanced around nervously, wondering if anyone else had caught the significance of his words. When Ethan finished speaking, applause erupted throughout the room and Lila clapped along with the rest of the guests, her cheeks flushed with emotion. After the ceremony ended, several people approached Ethan to congratulate him. Lila hung back, unsure whether to join the crowd or slip away quietly. Before she could decide, Ethan returned to her side, his expression soft and genuine. "That speech, I meant every word," he said quietly. "You've changed my life in ways I never expected. I hope you know that." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes, but she blinked them away, smiling faintly. "I think you've done the same for me. Thank you, Ethan, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the buzz of conversation and laughter, yet completely focused on each other. For all their differences, they had found something rare and meaningful, a connection rooted in mutual respect, growth, and trust. In the weeks that followed, Lila continued pursuing her dreams with renewed determination. She completed her graphic design course and secured more freelance projects, slowly building a portfolio that showcased her talent and creativity. Meanwhile, Ethan expanded the foundation's reach, using his resources to help even more people break free from the limitations holding them back. Though their paths occasionally diverged due to their busy schedules, they remained committed to supporting each other. Their relationship wasn't perfect. They still faced challenges and disagreements, but it was built on a foundation of honesty and understanding. They knew that love wasn't about being flawless. It was about embracing imperfections and growing together. One crisp autumn afternoon, as they strolled through Millennium Park, Ethan turned to Lila with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't met that night at the hotel?" Lila laughed softly, shaking her head. "Sometimes, but then I remember how far we've come since then. That mistake, it led us here, to this moment. And I wouldn't trade it for anything." Ethan smiled, reaching for her hand. "Me neither," as they walked side by side, surrounded by golden leaves and the hum of city life. Lila felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had taken unexpected turns, leading her down paths she never could have predicted. But through it all, she had discovered strength she didn't know she possessed, and a love that transcended boundaries. For Lila Monroe, the future was no longer something to fear. It was something to look forward to, with hope, courage, and the knowledge that second chances could lead to extraordinary beginnings.